We're going to talk a little bit of history today. Now, last week I gave you trivia, and our trivia question was name a superhero or supervillain that's named after a bug. This class right here, you guys finished second. The birdie class finished first. And the eagle class, which is the oldest class that we do these video conferences for, they finished last. So you guys whooped up on the older kids. They only got 4. You guys had like 7 or 8 last week. So great job there. The birdie kids had 10. They had 10 superheroes, supervillains named after bugs. Okay, so way back when, we'll go back as early as, let's see, 30 years ago. 30 years ago, clubs were not, the woods were not made of wood. So this is a 1 wood. I don't know if you can see the 1 on there. Wait, that's a 4 wood. Sorry. This is a 1 wood. So there's the number 1 on there. And it's a 1 wood because it's made of, well, it's made of wood. All right. So just so you kind of know, where did oh, there it is. Good grief. So back then it was made of wood. This is an insert. So they carved out a little piece in the top here, right here in the front. So they put this plastic insert, metal plate on the bottom. And then listen to this. Hear that? If you get an old wooden club, you'll have this big old thing of black string on here. It's kind of a plasticky string. And this is called whipping. That may be a trivia question you get asked one day that most kids would never know the answer to. This is called whipping. So this is to, you've got the piece of wood, which probably ends about right here, and then it would notch in, and then the shaft would be in there. So it just doesn't look good. So you put the whipping on there to make it look smooth up through here. Now the newer clubs have this little black piece right here. This is called a ferrule. So this does the exact same thing. It just makes everything look more smooth versus having a big notch sticking out there. So the ferrule took the place of the whipping. So there's a little bit of trivia there for you. This is a driver from probably it's probably about 1988. And see these things here? These are screws. So it used to be a phrase called hitting it in the screws, which you can hit it right there in the center of this thing. It was going to go the absolute farthest. So it's dead in the center of the club face. But that's where the phrase hitting it in the screws means. This club has actually never been hit. It's brand new. Somebody had it and they donated it, and I pulled it out of a pile of donations. It even has the original grip and wrapper on the grip, but this is a beautiful piece of blonde persimmon. So persimmon is actually the root of a persimmon tree that they would shape and turn into an awesome, awesome club. Now, if you look, here's a comparison. Look at the size of these clubs. Here's a driver from today's time frame, and this is a driver from 30 years ago. You think you guys have it a little bit easier trying to hit a golf ball without missing? I mean, look at this thing. This is huge. I mean, that surface of that face is just enormous. Now, when I said hitting it in the screw would have been right here in the center of the face. But nowadays, to hit the ball the farthest, instead of hitting it in the screw, you actually hit it about right up here. So it's a little bit higher on the club face. And this is the toe of the club out here. This is the heel. So it's a little bit towards the toe and a little bit higher. This will give you the absolute longest shot with your driver. What they do is they hook this up to a machine called the Iron Byron, which this is a robot that swings it exactly the same every time. And what they'll do is they'll adjust. So the ball will be right here. Then they'll hit it, and they'll measure everything, and they'll move the ball all around the face, and it makes contact at all these different spots, and then they measure how far the ball goes. And through all that research, they found that the ball that's up here goes the farthest. It's kind of interesting to know. So you got to, if you know where to hit it on the club face, maybe you can do that more and you hit it farther. But huge advantage having this gigantic titanium club head versus that tiny little old wooden thing. Once again, look at the size of that. Good grief. It's like a rowboat next to the Titanic. My goodness. Okay, so a little bit of history here. And this is something I want you guys, here's like some homework I want you guys to go into. Go and Google, YouTube, there's 6 names. So if you got a piece of paper, or your parents can go back and look at all of the old First Tee of Greater Charlotte YouTube videos, and you can get the names off of here. But there was like these 3, like they're the big 3 back in the late 60s and 70s, and that was Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer, and Gary Player. Those were the 3 biggest names in golf, the 3 biggest superstars. And there was probably, I think it was a 5 to 7 year stretch that one of those 3 guys won the Masters. So they just took turns putting the jacket on one another year after year after year after year after year. It's kind of cool. Jack Nicklaus has the most major championship wins in the history of golf, which is 18. So Tiger Woods is like a couple away from him, so he needs to win a couple more to pass Jack Nicklaus, who the Golden Bear is widely considered the greatest player ever. Some people argue that, but, you know, who's to say, different era, different time. So, I mean, can you imagine Jack Nicklaus was winning major championships, hitting clubs like this, and Tiger got to play with these things? I don't know. It's hard to say who the better player would have been if they were playing with the same equipment in the same era. Now, before Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer, and Gary Player were out there, there was another big 3 that were out there playing, and that was Ben Hogan, Byron Nelson, and Sam Snead. Now, Sam Snead has the most wins ever on the PGA Tour. Tiger needs a couple to pass him. So if Tiger Woods were to win 3 more major championships, and those are the only 3 wins he had for the rest of his career on the PGA Tour, not only would he pass Jack Nicklaus as the most major wins ever, he would pass Sam Snead as the most PGA Tour wins ever. Pretty impressive, especially in this day and age. So Sam Snead. Then you had Byron Nelson, widely considered the truest, kindest, most gentlemanly golfer of his era. Awesome, awesome player. At one point on the PGA Tour, he won 11 straight tournaments. 11 straight tournaments. Holy cow. If one of us went out and won 11 straight tournaments on the PGA Tour, that would be worth probably $15 to $20 million. Wow, that's incredible. Not only did he win 11 tournaments straight, he won 19 tournaments in 1 year. That's pretty impressive. So you've had Sam Snead, most wins ever on tour, Byron Nelson, 11 straight and 19 in 1 year, and then you had Ben Hogan. Now, Ben Hogan is widely considered one of the 2 greatest ball strikers in the history of the game. That's pretty impressive. I mean, this guy hit it dead in the screws every single time. Matter of fact, when he hit his iron, say this is the face of an iron, he hit the center of it so much that he would wear out a little dent in the middle of his clubs. So he had to replace his clubs a lot because he'd wear out the sweet spot. That's how good he was. So Byron Nelson, Ben Hogan, and Sam Snead would battle it out for all these tournaments. But Ben Hogan, he was only about 5'8", 140 pounds soaking wet, but he was a tenacious player. They called him the wee Iceman, the Hawk. I mean, his eyes were always focused on the target. You know, he like would block everything out when he was playing golf. One story is he's playing in the Masters, and they're playing on a hole, and one of his opponents has a hole-in-one. Ben Hogan didn't even know. Ben Hogan makes birdie. This guy had a hole-in-one. So Hogan made 2. His playing partner had a 1. They go to the 13th tee box, and we all know who gets to go first on the next tee box, right? The person with the lowest score. And who can get better than a 1? Nobody. So Ben Hogan steps up on the tee box thinking he has the honor of playing first, and his opponent goes, hey, Ben, I had a hole-in-one. And he's like, oh, sorry. So, whoa, that's kind of crazy. So he really focused. But circling back around, Ben Hogan was just an amazing player. And in 1953, or before 1953, he was driving back to Texas with his wife in the car. And they're driving along these big old giant steering wheels in this old car. And it's nighttime, it's foggy, and here comes a bus. And it veers into his lane. And Ben Hogan realizes this bus is going to hit his car. And he dives across the seat, because back then people didn't wear seatbelts, which is not good. But at this point, probably saved his life. He dove across to protect his wife, to save her. And the steering wheel, where he was just sitting, went through the seat. Crazy. He hurt his legs really bad. They took him to the hospital. The doctor said, "Sorry, Mr. Hogan, but you're never going to walk again." And that he couldn't accept that. He didn't believe him, and he set out. Once he could start kind of getting up around, he started walking. He started practicing again. And in 1953, he goes out. He wins the first 3 major championships of the year. He wins the Masters. He wins the British Open, or the U.S. Open. And he only played in the British Open one time, and he won the British Open that year. That's pretty awesome. So Ben Hogan, what was our core value today? Perseverance. Ben Hogan never gave up. Even when the doctor said, "You're never going to walk again," he said, "I don't believe you. It's not up to you. It's up to me," because he had the willpower and the desire to get back out there, not only to walk again, but to play awesome major championship golf. And he won the first 3 major championships that year. So never give up. If you have the desire to go accomplish something, don't let anything ever get in your way. Don't let anything ever stop you. So those are 2 of the, they call them the big 3 or the great 3. There's another group that was called the Great Triumvirate, which was like Harry Vardon, J.H. Taylor, and James Braid. But that was like back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. But that's another story for another day. So go and look those people up, and you can actually YouTube some videos of those guys. Pretty awesome golf swings and things you can emulate and try to do. Don't forget, get 2 books out, work on that putting drill. If you want to get better at putter, you want to get better at playing golf, if you want to beat your dad, your mom, your sister, your brother, whatever, use that drill in your house. I promise you, your putting is going to get a lot better. I mean, super duper good. And then play 3-knock all over the house. Remember, whoever gets closest without hitting it gets to pick the next target. Whoever has the most wins out of 9 targets is the winner chicken dinner. Make your brother or sister have to clean the dinner table and wash dishes. Who knows? Do something like that. But does anybody have any questions for me tonight? Who here is ready to get back to having some summer camps? Looking forward to it. So hopefully we're going to set some certification days here before too long. And we're going to discuss that this week, set some days, and then that way you guys can come in. For all you players, you have to take the written test. You have to take a written golf skills test, a written life skills test, and then you'll be ready to move on to the par level. So be on the lookout for that. Tell your parents, like, hey, check the emails because I want to take the test so I can move up to par and get moving on, working up through the different levels. So